Let's just start off with the elephant in the room. I think everybody at some point or another either used Instacart or maybe tried to use it during the pandemic. My question is that type of interest that we saw in 2020 and in 2021, is that still there here in 2023, heading into 2024?
Yeah, no, and thanks again for having me on to start. And that's the reason why we have a hold rating on the stock. If you look at just from a top-down perspective for the industry, only 12% of grocery sales are done online right now. So again, you had this huge catalyst of the pandemic with getting people to try these services for the first time. And now we just think, what's the catalyst really to potentially even double penetration here? We think it's going to be a longer road ahead. And then you throw on competition on top of that. 80% of Instacart's GTV, that's coming from their marketplace. And we think competitors like DoorDash and Uber are going to become increasingly competitive in the grocery space over time.
We'll talk a little bit more about the competition, because this seemed to be absent from the discussion when it came public. The idea that Instacart has something relatively unique, but there's got to be that question as to whether some of the other grocery or delivery companies, if you will, can sort of move into this space. You also, of course, have the elephant in the room with an Amazon or one of these other big players that I feel like could just flip a switch if they ever decided to get their act together and do the same thing.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And so I think it's important to give the timeline here for how Uber and DoorDash, or when they really announced grocery. And it was in the summer of 2020. They actually didn't even have an announcement with their first major grocery chain until in 2021. And really, so they were late to the game with grocery. They were, trying to really get the product right. I still think they're in that mode. I do think grocery from a product technology standpoint is more difficult than restaurant, but I think over time they should be able to figure it out. And Dara, Uber CEO, was at a competitors conference a couple of weeks ago talking about how later this year, that's when they're really going to be integrating Corner Shop with Uber Eats. That's going to add a lot more product functionality. So again, I think that Instacart had a decade-long head start, and that gap is going to be able to close over time. And it was funny, when we went through the report, we were really focused on Uber and DoorDash. And usually when you're talking about competition, there's a spot where Amazon is touching. It doesn't take that long to get to them. With Amazon, we can put them in the same camp as Walmart, where it's these one-piece solutions. And I think that's why, if you look at the whole grocery delivery market, we think Instacart actually lost share, even if it was stable with those third-party delivery companies like an Uber or DoorDash over the past year, because Amazon and Walmart have been growing the market. And we think that that's the risk, that those chains continue to take share in the overall category.
Well, Bernie, if you take a look at the filings prior to the IPO, it was interesting that you saw that orders on the platform were pretty much flat in the first half of 2023. But then you take a look at advertising revenue. It actually accounts for nearly a third of Instacart's total revenue. And couching that in the competitive landscape, is that silver lining from advertising enough to cushion the blow of Instacart losing market share here?
Yeah, and so advertising is how we have mid-single-digit growth for GTV, but high single-digit growth for the whole company. And they're operating as a retail media network. This is a really highly effective form of advertising, where it's in a closed-loop environment, meaning the transaction is happening the same place that the advertising is happening. So, you can really have 100% attribution. It's powerful for CPG advertisers. The only thing is that advertising, was doubling as they're approaching $1 billion in terms of advertising revenue. It is slowing down. And actually, this is one area of pushback that I wasn't expecting from investors, but really focused on Instacart actually competing with grocers for those same CPG dollars. So as consumer spending shifts more online, those advertising dollars are following. And so they're competing with that same, competing with their partners for the same dollars.
And Bernie, you're one of 3 analysts that's initiated coverage of Instacart. All 3 of those analysts, including yourself, have a hold on Instacart. What would you need to see that would bump you up to a buy?
Yeah, so we did a scenario analysis in our note where we said, what's the bull case and what's the bear case? And in the bull case, that's when growth can really look like an Uber or a DoorDash. And I think that's why, that's how you get to a high teens multiple $55 bull case we have on the stock. And so that would be these grocery gains that we saw during the pandemic, actually having this network effect where you're looking at 200 basis points of annual share gains for grocery adoption. And that can really drive GTV a lot faster. Advertising is based on a percentage of GTV. So you could, get a lot faster revenue growth. And then this is a company that's shown a lot of operating leverage. So if you look from 2019 to 2023, we think that there's going to be a $1.1 billion swing in EBITDA. A lot of that is, really leveraging off fixed costs, but you need to have that revenue growth to have that operating leverage. So in our bull case, we would have greater operating leverage. In our bear case, it's that grocery, online grocery gains really go back to pre-pandemic levels, talking less than 100 basis points per year. So then you're looking at mid-single digit revenue growth, high single digit EBITDA growth. If you look at a comp set of other tech companies with high margins and low growth, that's how you get a high single digit multiple. And that's where our $7 bear case comes from.